Okay, so let's start. Welcome to the STARS Residencies webinar, information webinar for the 2021-2022 school year. I'm Diane Daly from the Mass Cultural Council. I'm the Education Programs Manager, and I run the STARS Residencies program. And with me this afternoon is Kata Swabeck, who works on the Creative Youth Development team, and Jen Lawless, who's our Director of Operations. So thanks, Jen and Kata, for your assistance on this. So this afternoon, we are going to be talking about the STARS Residencies program. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, the STARS Residencies program is a grant program run by the Mass Cultural Council to fund residencies of 3 days or more in Massachusetts K-12 schools in the arts, sciences, and arts interpretive sciences and humanities. These residencies are led by practicing artists, scientists, and scholars who come to the schools to work with the students and teachers to create rich, creative learning experiences. And we all know what this is all about. It's about helping young people develop their creativity, their critical thinking, connect to their own voices, discover hidden talents, explore the natural world. And I took out empower because it's about powering the next generation. Today's information session is going to cover these things. We're going to go through the headlines for the 2021-2022 school year. We'll talk about the new online application system. We'll talk about the funding rates for this year, designing your residency. We'll go through the new review process, and from time to time, we'll ask for your questions. And you can put the questions in the chat all the way along the way, and we'll pause every once in a while and look at those questions, and Kata will pass them on to me. So here are the headlines. The online application this year, and this is a big deal, is open for 4 weeks. And we've done that because we wanted to provide much better access to the program. We've also done it because we have a new online application system, and you're all going to have to learn to work with that. So we want to give you the time to do that. So the application opens September 22nd, and it will close on Wednesday, October 20th at 11:59 p.m. Just to let you know, we have a help desk, and that will be working until 6 p.m. So my recommendation is don't wait until the last hours to get your application going, because you'll need time to do that with the new system, and we want to be able to help you. The funding notification is November 30th, and we'll talk more about that later. We will talk about our new online application system. We'll talk about the updated funding rates and the new review process. And now I'd like to turn this over to Jen Lawless.
Hi, everyone. So I'm here to kind of give you a little bit of information about using this new system. I know it's different when we go from the system you're familiar with to the new one. So we're going to walk through some of the basics. And we'll go next. So the good news is we used to have our grants in 5 or 6 different grants management systems. So depending on what program you're applying to, you used to have to go to a different place, and you could never see all your stuff in one place. So now all of the grants, our direct grants, and the grants made by local cultural councils are all in one system. So when you are logged in to the system, you'll actually get to see all the funding opportunities you'll be eligible for, and all of the grants you might be working on are in one place. So ultimately, it will give you a more seamless experience once you're kind of in and familiar with it. And so here's the URL to the new grants management system. It's a platform built by Smart Simple. And so that's the URL you'll be going to. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit of information about kind of the structure of the system to help you understand, because it is a little bit different than our past system. So every person that logs into the grants management system is called a user. And what makes one user or person different from another is their email address. So in this system, your email address is like your unique ID. So you get one person per email address and one email address per person. And this gets more important once we start learning about how people are connected to organizations. But when you log into the system, your email address is your username. Next slide, please. So as a user or person, you can be connected to one organization at a time. Or if you're an individual, like an individual teaching artist without an organization affiliation, you can just be yourself. You can be a user that has no organization connection. So and this little drawing shows you, you can have one person connected to one organization. So as a person, you can only be connected to one, but an organization can have many people connected to it. So it can be many people at the same school can be connected to the school. If it's a cultural organization where there might be multiple teaching partners, they can all be connected to that same organization. So this is just a little bit of background. Next slide, please. So the thing to remember, especially those of you potentially who wear multiple hats. I know many people do wear multiple hats, but the kind of way the system is set up, the connections help keep the data organized and make it so every time you come to the system, you don't need to re-enter information. But it also means if you have multiple hats, you can only wear one at a time in the system. So for example, if you're a teaching artist, but you're also an individual artist applying for fellowship grants, you might have an email address as an individual applying for grants. If as a teaching artist, you're also connected to an organization, because that's where you're working and doing your residencies through, you'll need a different email address to be connected to the organization. And if you're very civically minded and you're also volunteering for your local cultural council and you want to be able to log in as that type of user, you'll have to have a third email address. So if you have many hats, you'll need many email addresses, because every time you're logged in the system, you're kind of acting on behalf of whichever organization you're connected to, or if you're not connected to an organization, you're acting on behalf of yourself. So that's just a little caution. So those of you who have more than one role and have perhaps applied to grants in the past, it just might take us a few minutes to help you figure out how to make sure your email addresses are connected to the right roles. Next slide, please. So what have we done so far? So we have gone ahead. So in addition to you as a user, every organization also has a record in the school. Sorry, has a record in the system. I have schools on the mind. And we've created an organizational profile already for every K through 12 school in Massachusetts using DESE's data. So every school already has an organization record. So if you're coming to the system from a school, you're likely only going to need to create a record for yourself and connect yourself to the school. For those of you that are with cultural organizations, may or may not already be in the system. So some of you may be registering your organization for the first time as well. And then those of you who are individuals, you're really only focused on registering for yourself. So there's a couple ways that you can figure out if you already have a record in the system or not. But I would suggest for those of you tied to schools, it's probably simplest to just try registering. And that will give you the fastest answer about whether maybe you as a person already have a record or not. So that's kind of how I'm going to suggest you start. Next slide, please.
Oops.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's good. Next slide, please.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
just, we're going to do a little screen share. So what we're going to walk through, I'm going to try to hit it from both perspectives, the school perspective, but also for those of you that are either individual teaching artists or with cultural organizations as teaching artists. So we're going to start kind of doing the screen share, walking schools through how they're going to register, and then we'll do it again kind of from the cultural partner lens. So I'm going to share my screen. And I think, okay, now I'm just going to take this. I think you might have to stop sharing, Diane, and then I can share. Great. So this is the landing page for the grants management system. And as I mentioned, if you are someone at a school, the simplest thing for you to do when you come here is to just go right ahead and click the register button. Now, you have two choices, and everyone in terms of applying for STARS is gonna, I shouldn't say that. If you're a school, you're gonna click organization. So from a school, you'll click organization. And then the first thing you're gonna do is just look for the school you're associated with. Sorry. So as you start typing, you can see that hits come up. So you can see already there's several schools with the word Lincoln in it. So what you're going to want to make sure is that you pick the correct school. So you'll just want to take a close look. So for example, there's 2 Lincoln Elementary schools, and maybe you're at the one in Melrose and not the one in Winchester. But once you find your correct school, you're going to select it. And then all you have to do is enter your first name, your last name, your email and phone, and hit submit. So this is connecting you as a user to the organization, the Lincoln Elementary School. Now, if you hit submit and it tells you your email address, which you've entered. So again, this is your email address, not the school's email address, not a general email address. This is your email address that you use, through your work with the school. If it tells you there's an email already in the system for that, then you're just going to bounce right back here. And you're going to try hitting forgot password. You're going to enter that email address in, and you're going to say you're not a robot. And then it will send you an email to that email address with a temporary password. So that's how I suggest starting as a school. Now we have uploaded DESE's most recent list of all of the schools, the Department of Education, elementary and secondary education's list into the system. If for some reason you're not finding your school, you can click need help with login right over here. And you can also add it yourself, but it might be helpful to just check in first. So now we're going to come at this process again for those of you that are cultural partners, either individual cultural partners or cultural partners with an organization affiliation. So cultural partners that are at organizations, if your organization has a history of applying to the Mass Cultural Council for grants, there's a chance that your organization might already be in the system. And if you're someone that's filled out grants in the past for the Mass Cultural Council like applications, you may have a record as well. So you have 2 options. You can do what I just showed, which is just go ahead and try to register and see what happens. Or if you want to check and see if you have a record, you can just skip right to forgot password. And in this case, you will, let's put something in. You'll enter your email, you'll say you're not a robot, and you'll hit submit. And then this will give you some helpful instructions about what to expect. So what to expect is an email to that address from this address, masscultural@_no reply@smartsimple.com. And then when you get that email, and let me show you what that looks like. When you get that email, it provides a temporary password. And then you're able to come right back here and log in with that temporary password. So you'll put your email address in, the temporary password, you'll hit login. You'll be prompted to create a new password, and you can pick one that you'll remember. It doesn't have to be random. And that's how you would connect to an existing account. So it's kind of your call if you want to just go ahead and register and see what happens, or if you want to try to connect with an existing account. It'll work either way, and it won't let you create more than one account. So those are your 2 doors in. Just I'll point out, so the registration, so for those organizations that need to register, if a cultural organization does need to register, and you're not already in the system, there's this link right here up in the top part, and you're going to just register manually using this form. This is just asking if you're a for-profit entity. You say no, and then you can register your cultural organization here. And again, schools are not going to do this. Schools are already in the system. This is only for cultural organizations that want to be invited to take part in the STARS application with the school. And then backing up here, if you are an individual teaching artist and you want to collaborate on the application with a school for your residency application, you're going to click individual. And here, there's individual, the information about you, your address. We have optional demographic questions. So they are all mandatory, but you can skip whichever ones you're uncomfortable answering or you're in a rush. So we appreciate any information you're willing to share, as this information is helping us understand who we're serving, and it's supporting our efforts towards our diversity, equity, access, and inclusion work. But again, they are optional. So you'll just complete that and create your registration as an individual. And then I'll show you what it looks like once you're in and what to expect. So here we are. I've made it past registration. In this case, I'm a school. So I'm a person associated with the school. So when I log in the first time, it'll say your name as an individual here. And this is your kind of homepage or portal. And so you'll see these are two important buttons. Current opportunities are grants available to your organization or school that are currently open. These are directly grants from the Mass Cultural Council. And here's where you can find out if it's a local cultural council grant opportunity period, which it is right now. You can actually click here and apply to your local cultural council. So you can apply to the Mass Cultural Council and your local cultural council in one place. This is your profile. It's information about you. And this is the organization profile. That's information about, in this case, the school. So to get to STARS, you'll look under current opportunities, and you'll see the STARS residencies are there. And you'll see that your school is also eligible to apply for some other projects, potentially, depending on what you're doing. So everything is there. So I did want to flag that only people associated with schools, K through 12 schools, are going to see STARS here. This is only if your organization type is a K through 12 school will you find STARS here. If you are with a cultural organization or if you are an individual, you will not see the opportunity here. And that's where, as Diane kind of goes through the application, it just means that if you're collaborating on an application with a school, the school can invite you to their application and you can serve as a co-applicant. Once you are invited to a school's application, you'll find it here instead. So there's a section, applications, and once you're invited to an application, it's going to be in this in progress section, and that's where you go and you could work on it. So I think I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions or anything before we hand it back to Diane.
There was one question in the chat. Tiffany was asking about the regional, she works at the regional school system and wants to apply for 2 different schools in her district. And she's just wondering if she applied as the district, wondering if she would qualify for possible funding max of, it might be 11,000 or 5,500 for both schools.
Well, let me answer that one. You are only the school, the individual school is the applicant in this program. So they may be part of a regional school district, but the grant is actually going to the school. We can make an arrangement if the payment needs to go to the regional district, but the actual applicant is the individual school. So if they're working together on a project, each one of them needs to submit an application for their own school.
And then from a technical standpoint, if you are trying to complete the applications for both schools, you're only going to be able to be connected to one at a time in the system. So you'll need, because you can't be connected to both at the same time. So you'll have to get it. Oh, sorry. So you need another person or email address to apply for the other of the 2.
Any other questions, Kata?
Yeah, she was wondering if she should just create a second email. Sounds like that would be a good idea. And then Rodolfo also asked, as a school, should we have partners ready to implement the program, or will MCC support bringing potential partnerships?
So as part of the application, you need to already have your cultural partner lined up for the residency, because you need to be able to say what the residency is going to be. Let me say this, is that this webinar is being recorded. So we'll be putting that up on our website in a couple of days. So if you'd like to go through what Jen just walked through, again, you will be able to get the recording. And the other piece is that we have, sorry, I have to do this again. We have a help desk who can help you as you get into the application. So let me just get this into the slideshow. So for assistance with registering and accessing the online application, you would email mcc_helpdesk@art.state.ma.us. And if you have trouble with that, you can email me, and my email information is at the end of this webinar. Jen, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just seeing a question from Gail. So one of the questions is, as an organization, do we ask the school for permission to be added to their school portal? So I just want to clarify, so you're not, as an organization, you're not going to be connected to the school's organization profile or username or anything. Someone from the school is going to invite you to one specific application. So you're connecting to the actual application, and you're, as a co-applicant, you can edit and type into the application, but you won't be able to submit it. So the school has to start it and invite you and needs to submit. So then that way we know, in this program, the school is the applicant. So I think that hopefully helped answer Gail's question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jen, very much. We appreciate it. Jen has to run off. We grabbed her for this time. So thank you. Jen led the building of this system for Mass Cultural Council with a team. And so we really appreciate all the time and work she's got put into this.
Yeah, and it was a team effort. And Diane is going to be here to help guide you through the process. And then we have the help desk, as you mentioned. So Evelyn is going to be answering any technical questions you have about the application system, whereas Diane's your expert for the program content, as usual.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Bye. Okay.
I'm also just getting used to this chat. This is a different way than we've done it. So did everybody get to see that email address now? Because I know some of it was not coming through. I think everybody can see that. And then also Faye had mentioned that she had a question that she could ask in words, or she could type it into the chat.
Faye, why don't you type it into the chat, and Kata will let us know about it when we have another pause for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we have new funding rates, and this applies for this year. We haven't increased the funding rates in a number of years, so we're really happy we are able to do this. Let me just start this out with talking about what a session is, because that's the building block here. A session is the creative learning time when the cultural partner is working with students. So we have increased the length of a session to be one session. So one session this year is 30 to 75 minutes working with students. Used to be 40 to 60. We extended that, and so it's 30 to 75 minutes working with students. Two sessions is 80 to 120 minutes. And the rate per session is $150. So that means if you do one session, each session is $150. Two sessions, that's $300 for the 2 sessions combined. The rate for planning is $250 stipend for cultural partners, and we'll talk more about planning later on. And the grant cap, because we raised the rate per session, is now $5,500, but there's no limit on how long your residency can be as long as it is finished by June 30th. And if you have funding from other sources and can extend the residency, we fully support that. So the Mass Cultural Council grant is capped at $5,500, but you can do your residency for as long as you want. So the grant amount is calculated by taking the number of sessions, multiplying it by $150, and then adding the $250 for planning that goes to the cultural partner. And the great news is that the new online system actually does the grant and the budget calculations for you, which is very exciting. I can hear the applause out there. Let's talk a moment about the residency eligibility. This is a checklist that you will have at the beginning of your application to make sure that your residency will be eligible to apply. It must start no earlier than September 1st and end no later than June 30th. And that's so that the residency is done in this school year. It must involve a cultural partner, and that's the teaching artist or scientist or scholar leading the residency. It's not the organization they work for. There's a place that you can put the organization they work for, but they are the one that's actually doing the residency, and we'd like to know who they are. It will focus on the arts, interpretive sciences, and/or humanities. Have a plan for fully remote delivery if the residency is partially or fully in person, should it become necessary to switch due to health and safety concerns. This is so residencies can be finished by June 30th. I know that schools, I think at this point, are in-person only learning, but if the situation changes and a residency needs to move to remote or hybrid in order to be able to continue, you need to have a plan for that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. And the residency needs to articulate 3 clear learning objectives, one of which is a socially conscious learning objective, and I'll talk about those also in just a second. On down the checklist, have each artist, scientist, or scholar work with their students for a minimum of 1 session over 3 days. And that's so that the residency has some depth. It's not just a 1-day experience. It's an opportunity for the young people to develop trust and a relationship with a teaching artist or scientist, and it's an opportunity to do some in-depth learning. It must include a culminating event if the residency is 5 days or more in the school. We'll talk about culminating events in a moment. And include planning time with a cultural partner prior to and during the residency. And again, that's very important to a successful residency, and that's why we give you the stipend. And each application must be for 1 unified residency. So if an application contains more than 1 residency, it won't be eligible. 1 residency per school. And it needs to be approved by the school principal and the cultural partners. Also, in designing your residency, consider the location. We just talked about that just a second. It can be, from our point of view, in-person, remote, or hybrid. Obviously, it's up to the school. And you must have the plan to be able to switch, if you need to remote to complete the residency by June 30th. You don't need to include the plan in the application. It's just a checkbox to let us know that you have considered this. If a residency has multiple cultural partners, each one must work with their group of students for 1 session on at least 3 days. And if it's multiple grades, it needs to be a unified residency, not a different residency for each grade. And the grades must be working on the same unifying theme. For example, the world outside our school, and the same content adjusted for grade level. Culminating events. So these are opportunities for the students to demonstrate what they have learned and created. And it's an opportunity for the community to understand how important creative learning is. So we require it for residencies of 5 days or more in the school because you've been there quite a while. You've been working with the students, and we'd love to have the students be able to share their work and learning. And we do mean it's promoting the value of creative learning, because when parents and people in the community see the work that the young people do through these residencies, they begin to understand how the arts and the sciences and humanities can really make a difference in a young person's life. Whoops. And I have a thing in front of, okay, planning with a cultural partner in the school. So as I said, these are key to a high quality, valuable residency, and we give you that $250 stipend to pay the cultural partner for that time. And now I can go down. So let's talk about learning objectives. These are the cornerstone of your residency. This is what you want the students to be able to do, to understand, to know at the end of the residency. They're clear and measurable skills, knowledge, and understandings that you want the students to develop through their residency experience. It's important to develop the learning objectives collaboratively with a classroom teacher. They understand their students best, and the cultural partner understands what they're trying to bring to the students. So you put those two people together to create the learning objectives, and you will have successful learning objectives. The question is, after it's all over, what do you want students to know, understand, or be able to do? So Don Bensky, who is the content specialist for arts education at the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, helped us with this. And she's given us a couple of examples in learning objectives in terms of weak and strong learning objectives. So a weak learning objective has no end result or way to assess the learning. For example, students will be exposed to artwork from the Surrealist movement. So the weak part of this is exposed as their experience, but what did they learn or are they able to do as a result of that? So a strong way of putting this would be students will identify key characteristics of the Surrealist movement. So it's clear what the end result of the learning is. Learning objectives that are strong are reflective of the student's learning, not the cultural partner or teacher's instruction. And this is really important because a lot of applications come in with some confusion about this. So an example of a weak learning objective in this way is the one that says introduce primary colors. That may be what the teacher is doing, but it doesn't tell you what students are doing or learning or walking away from the experience knowing. A strong way to put this would be to say students will identify and use primary colors in a work of art. So that's what the students are learning, what the students are demonstrating, not what the teacher or cultural partner, and in this case, I mean teacher and or cultural partner, are doing. So I mentioned the socially conscious learning objective, and these are very important, obviously, these days, a critical part of young people's learning. This is creative learning that helps prepare the students to be positive contributors to their world. It connects them to their own voice. This is where they get connected to their own voice. They connect with the world around them. And the residency experience teaches equity and inclusion. I want to say a couple words about creative youth development, which is CADA's world. But it also is very much a part of the world of the residency work with students. It's an intentional practice. It fosters active creative expression in the arts, sciences, and humanities, while developing social, emotional, and life skills for the young people. Creative youth development approaches young people as active agents of their own change with strengths and skills to be developed and nurtured. And culture plays a significant role in the growth of creative and productive, independent-minded citizens. So you can see already how much of this is in action in a good, strong residency. There are 6 principles that have been shown over these 20 years of creative youth development to be essential to the work. And again, you'll recognize these from residencies. Provide safe and healthy spaces for youth. The asset space, focus on the strengths of the young people, not their deficits. Foster positive relationships and social skills. Be youth-driven. Set high expectations for learning and growth. And address the broader context in which the young people operate. It takes a village. What is their community and how are they living in it? So I mention these because these are important to consider in terms of the learning objectives that you put together. So let's take a second for questions. Any questions, Kata?
Yeah, we have 3 of, oh, can you hear me okay? We have 3 of them. First of all, just an easy one, whether or not the PowerPoint will be emailed or will it just be on our site?
Well, the recording, thank you. The recording will be available on the website in a couple of days. We have to download it first and then put it up on our website, but you'll be able to find it. And if you can't find it, email me. And again, my email's at the end of this presentation, and I can forward it to you.
Great. Second question was for Kimberly asked, am I correct that the new funding rates exclude any schools with more than 11 classes? Is that what you were saying? Like if there's more than 11 classes, other people can get more funding for it? Maybe you can explain more about that.
Okay, what I meant was there's no limit on how many classes can be involved. There or how many classrooms can be involved. There's no limit, and there's no limit on how many sessions per class.
Well, any schools with more than 11 classes. Any schools.
Yeah. So again, no limit on classrooms and no limit on the number of sessions per classroom. But we do have a cap on the grant amount.
Okay, so I think that's what she goes, it is limited by the 5,500.
Yes, right. The grant is limited, but not the residency.
Gotcha. And then this is a little bit of a complicated and good question, but we are a cultural organization with a fall residency already underway. Can we, meaning our school, apply for the same residency? If so, will STARS rates or the rate of school or the rate that the school has currently agreed to pay us, which is less than what the STARS rate is, will that apply?
Well, that's between you and the school. If the school decides to apply, then it seems to me that you would want to work out with them that they would pay you the rate for the session that the grant offers. You can apply if you've already started your residency. There's no guarantee that you will get that grant, but if you do, we will be giving the school the equivalent, we'll be giving the school $150 per session for that residency, and again, up to the $5,500 cap.
Okay, great. And then we have one more that came in, which is just, does the teaching artist have to be registered as a STARS artist in the MCC database?
Nope, we don't have a roster. There's no roster. We ended our roster many years ago because people felt it was exclusive. No, this is about schools and cultural partners coming together of their own volition. A school can choose which cultural partner they want to work with. This cultural partner can approach a school that they want to work with. It's up to you all to find what is the best combination for you, and we don't endorse any particular cultural partner.
And then we just got 3 more that came in.
I can take one more.
So does the culminating event count as a paid $150 session?
Only if the cultural partner is there. So if you have a culminating event, if the school decides to have a culminating event, and if they have a residency of 5 days or more, they do need to have one. The cultural partner is not required to be there, but they cannot count that session in the grant calculation. That
Unless
makes
they did it as a 4-session thing and the 5th session was around the culminating event? Would they be able-
right, and the cultural partner was there.
Okay. Do we have time for one more?
One more.
Okay. Jen mentioned that the cultural partners can be invited to be a co-author of the grant. When I jumped into the system, it seemed that the language implies that the second person should be working in the school. Do you have thoughts about that?
No, the cultural partner needs to be part of the residency, but they don't need to be an employee of the school. So the school opens the application. The school invites the cultural partner to be a co-applicant so they can work on the application. And then it comes down to, when it comes down to submit, it's the school that needs to hit submit to submit that application.
Okay. And can private schools apply?
Absolutely. Any school, any K-12 school in Massachusetts that has an identifying number with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is eligible for a STARS grant.
Okay. And I think you're going to talk about the rubric next, right?
It's coming up.
Okay, so great.
Review process. Good. We are going to review all eligible applications that are received by the deadline. This is different this year. We're going to review them all that were received by the deadline. They're going to be scored by outside reviewers with review criteria and rubrics that we will talk about in a minute. The reviewers are individuals from the field of creative learning who are either educators or cultural partners, and they bring their expertise to the review. The applications will be ranked by score. The highest scores will be funded first. Those applications that have the same score, we will randomize those and then go down that funding order. So they all have the same score. They get randomized in terms of what order they're in, and then we fund down that list. And we fund down the list until all funds are allocated. Like I said, the notification date is Tuesday, November 30th, and everyone will hear by email whether they got a grant or not. If you didn't hear on Tuesday, send me an email because it probably went to your, well, check your junk mail first, and then send me an email if you didn't receive anything. So let's talk about the scoring criteria. The scoring is based on 2 criteria. And they are the strength of the learning objectives and the appropriateness of the residency activities to achieve those objectives. So that's why I spent some time talking about learning objectives. This is a key part of your application. Rubrics. So I hope your eyes aren't going to cross at this. They are all in the guidelines. So you don't need to take notes rapidly right now. Go to massculturalcouncil.org on the STARS webpage, look at the guidelines. All of this information is in the guidelines, and including the scoring rubrics. So for the criterion strength of learning objectives, number one is weak. And it is that none of the learning objectives are clear, engaging, or attainable. A 2 is below average, and that is that 2 of the learning objectives are to some extent unclear, unengaging, or unattainable and have significant flaws. A 3 is average. It means at least 2 of the learning objectives are clear, engaging, and attainable. A 4 is above average, which is all learning objectives are clear, engaging, attainable, and represent above average creative learning in the arts, sciences, and humanities. And a 5 is exemplary. All learning objectives are extremely clear, very engaging, attainable, and represent exemplary creative learning in the arts, sciences, and/or humanities. So that's for the criterion strength of the learning objectives. So the second criterion is, if I can get this to go, yep, appropriateness of activities to achieve the learning objectives. That's the second criterion. A 1, which is weak, is that the connection of the activities to the learning objectives is weak and they may not be engaging or attainable. 2 is below average, which is the activities are connected to 1 or 2 learning objectives, but some may be not engaging or attainable. 3 is average, which is the activities are connected to all learning objectives and are clear, engaging, and attainable. A 4 is above average, and that is that the activities are connected to all learning objectives and are clear, engaging, attainable, and represent above average creative learning in the arts, sciences, and humanities. And a 5 is exemplary, which is activities are connected to all learning objectives and are extremely clear, very engaging, attainable, and represent exemplary creative learning in the arts, sciences, and or humanities. So again, all of these are in the guidelines. So, and we'll take questions on that in just a second. So there are some application tips. And one is that the character counts include spaces and punctuation. So you absolutely need to write your narratives in a Word document and have it count the letters, spaces, and punctuation, because you don't want to get into putting this into your application and go over the count. There, you can see a PDF of the application on our website. Go to massculturalcouncil.org, click on education, click on stars, and you can get to a copy of that application. You want to make sure that the learning objectives are about what students will learn. I mentioned that this is a place where a lot of applicants trip up. So this is something to think about as you're putting those learning objectives together. So important. The session has the application has a session detail section. It's a narrative. Detail is key. This is where you can tell the reviewer what exactly is going to be happening in the residency, and then the reviewer can see what the students are going to do, what the cultural partner will do, and how teachers will extend the learning. And as you can imagine, this is key to understanding how the residency is going to achieve the learning objectives. So take your time to provide the detail. There's plenty of space, and remember, the reviewers don't know what you know, so describe it for them. So questions?
Yeah, we have a few here. First of all, can there be more than 3 learning objectives?
You can have as many learning objectives as you want for your residency. We're only interested in the top 2 and the socially conscious learning objective. But yeah, you'll want to have a number of learning objectives, absolutely.
Also, can schools apply for funds for out of school time as well, or like after school aspects of it?
Good question. An after school program that's run by a school is eligible to apply, but that is the one application from the school. So if the school's after school program is applying, they can't also apply for residency for during the school day.
Okay. And then also, Andrea asked, do all students need to meet with the cultural partner on each of the 3 days?
That's a great question. It's a little tricky. If you flip it around, each one of those students must meet with the cultural partner 3 times on 3 sessions. They can meet on different days from fellow students, but each one of them needs to have worked with a cultural partner for 1 session on 3 separate days. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Also, just is school vacation time, is that considered, that time frame considered after school?
That's a good question. If it's only happening during the school vacation, then I would treat that as after school. Yes.
All right, and then we have,
Sorry, Kata. If the program is being run by the school, if the program is an outside organization that is not, well, no, that doesn't work. The school would still be sponsoring the week. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
all right, and then we have just some math questions because there's just a little bit of confusion around. One person really wrote, the math works out to 11 classes and excludes city schools that typically have 15 classes. But then another person wrote, actually, if you have the 5,500 minus the 250, that equals 5,250. And at $150 a session, that would actually cover 35 sessions. So there's some confusion about why people are just saying 11 when it does seem to be more.
Right. That's why I think why I said if you have 11 classrooms that are being worked with, that's fine. You can have as many classrooms that the residency involves as you want.
But it could be, if it was like an hour session, it could be 35 sessions of an hour each for 150 a session. Because 35 times the 150 equals the 5,250.
Well, a session is 30 to 75 minutes. So you can meet with as many classrooms for 30 to 75 minutes as possible, but the grant will only cover up to $5,500 total, or $5,250 of that cost.
Okay. Okay, so it depends on how long the sessions are, but
Yes.
that's the number that we're working with. The 5,250 divided by 150. Okay. Oh, and then one person wrote, now I see if you're covering each classroom 3 times and there are 11 classrooms, that's 33 sessions. Yeah, you can't quite squeeze in a 12th classroom, but you could squeeze in some culminating events, it sounds like.
Yes. And again, you might be able to find some money through another source to be able to do a longer residency. But if you don't have funds from another source, then there is a limit. Yeah.
Yep.
Anything
So,
else, Rita?
yep, just clarifying. So then I think we're all on the same page. If here, okay, students have to be involved with the cultural partner for the duration of the project with a minimum of meeting 3 times, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yes.
Good. Okay. Any other questions, anybody? All right. Well, as I said, we're here.
Sorry. One last thing was just who is reviewing the grants?
They're the reviewers that are coming from outside the agency. They're individuals with experience in the field, either as an educator or a teaching artist, scientist, or scholar. So they're people that have experience in the field. And they're all from Massachusetts. The other thing I would say is, and we have a racial equity plan in the office, and we are committed to providing equal representation in the various groups that we gather. And so we have equal representation in the reviewers for the STARS program. Kata, anything else?
Nope. Well, is it possible that people can pay more than $150 per session? Can the cultural partners?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just use that to calculate what the grant should be. But you can pay more than that. You can even pay more than that out of the grant. It's just that the grant amount is going to be capped at $5,500.
And would it be okay if the culminating event is done virtually?
Yes, the way that we have this set up, it would be. The residency can be in person, remote, or hybrid. So yes, that would count.
Great. And sorry, I think it's because you don't have your name on there, but indeed you are the Diane Daly.
Oh yeah.
Only right there in person.
I'm not the voice of Mass Cultural Council. I'm Diane Daly. Yes, Diane Daly, program manager for the STARS program. There's my email. If you call me on my office phone and leave a voicemail, it gets delivered to me by email with your actual recording. So please leave me your email and phone number if you are leaving me a voice message. And then again, here's the email for the help desk. It's mcc_help_desk at art.state.ma.us. And that help is available until 6 p.m. on October 20th when the application closes. So thank you, everybody. Oh, I have one more slide, which is really important. Yes, thank you for your work on behalf of the young people of Massachusetts. We just provide the money, you do the magic. And we very much appreciate your work and your creativity and what you're bringing to young people. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.